"You've lived there long enough, Vanessa," my mom said, sliding a folder across the dining table. "Sign the transfer papers. The house belongs to this family." My older brother laughed. "It's not like you paid for it yourself." I stared at the document with my name already typed under current owner. Then my mom added, "If you don't sign, don't expect to be part of this family anymore." That's when I said, maybe we should wait until Grandma's will is read. My name is Vanessa Cole. I'm 37 years old, and until that night, I thought I understood exactly where I stood in my family. I thought loyalty meant something. I thought showing up, doing the hard work, and keeping things running meant people respected you. I was wrong. I work as a licensed real estate appraiser. I'm not flashy. I don't drive a luxury car or take vacations people post about online. I built my life slowly, inspection by inspection, client by client. Every dollar I earned came from showing up early and staying late. Growing up, I was the responsible one. The dependable daughter. The one who handled paperwork, scheduled appointments, paid bills on time, and reminded everyone about deadlines. My older brother, Derek, was the one they always praised. He was charming. He talked big. He had plans that never quite worked out, but somehow that made him exciting. I wasn't rich or glamorous, but I had something they didn't expect. Patience and attention to detail. Those two things saved my life. See, my grandmother, Dorothy Cole, was the sharpest woman I've ever known. She built her wealth quietly, owning rental properties and managing them herself well into her 70s. While everyone else in the family saw her as just a sweet old lady, I saw the real her. A businesswoman. A strategist. We bonded over property decisions and financial independence. She taught me how to read contracts, how to spot inflated appraisals, and how to protect myself legally. When she decided to sell one of her properties 3 years ago, a house valued at $410,000, she came to me. Not to Derek. Not to my mom. To me. The sale was handled legally, fairly, and transparently. She had her own attorney. I had mine. The appraisal was conducted by a third party. Every document was filed, notarized, and recorded. It was clean. But my mom always hinted that the house should come back to her someday. She'd say things like, "That house has been in our family for decades," or "Your grandmother didn't really understand what she was doing." She understood perfectly. After Grandma passed, the emotional shift in my family was immediate. Grief turned into calculation. Sadness turned into strategy. And then I received the text message about a family meeting. Just a simple group message that said, "We need to come together and discuss family matters. Sunday at 6. Be there." I felt something twist in my stomach. I sensed something was wrong. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself they were grieving and just wanted to be close. So I walked in expecting grief support. Maybe tears. Maybe shared memories. Instead, I walked into an ambush. If you've ever been the quiet, responsible one in your family, the one who carries weight while someone else gets the applause, this might feel familiar. Sometimes being dependable makes people think they can pressure you. They confuse your silence with weakness. They confuse your patience with permission. If you've ever felt underestimated because you weren't loud or dramatic, hit that subscribe button. Have you ever been told to keep the peace even when you were right? Share your story in the comments because I'm reading them. And if you believe standing your ground doesn't make you selfish, click like or share before we continue. This story is just getting started. The dining room smelled like my mom's lavender candles, the same ones she always lit when she wanted to set a mood. But the mood that night wasn't comfort. It was confrontation. Everyone was already seated when I walked in. My mom sat at the head of the table. Derek sat to her right, leaning back in his chair with his arms crossed. My Aunt Patricia and my Uncle Gerald were across from him, their faces unreadable. Cousins lined the edges of the room, standing near the walls like spectators waiting for a show. Nobody greeted me with a hug. Nobody asked how I was holding up after losing Grandma. My mom just gestured toward the empty chair and said, "Sit down, Vanessa. We have something to discuss." I sat. The chair creaked underneath me, and it felt like the loudest sound in the world. My mom opened a manila folder and slid it across the table. Inside was a stack of papers. Transfer documents. Already typed. Already formatted. My name listed as current owner. A blank line waiting for my signature. Your grandmother wasn't in her right mind when she sold you that house, my mom began, her voice smooth and rehearsed. We all know that. She was confused, and you took advantage of her trust. My throat tightened. That's not true. Derek leaned forward. Come on, Vanessa. You really think Grandma would have sold you a $400,000 house if she was thinking clearly? You went behind everyone's back. I didn't go behind anyone's back. She had her own lawyer. The sale was appraised independently. My mom waved her hand like I was swatting at something that didn't matter. Paperwork doesn't change what's right. That house belongs to this family. It always has. She tapped the folder. This is about correcting a mistake. I looked around the room. Nobody spoke. My Aunt Patricia stared at her hands. Uncle Gerald glanced at the window. My cousins shifted uncomfortably. They all knew what was happening. None of them were going to stop it. Derek said, you wouldn't even have that house without us. Without this family. Without Grandma feeling sorry for you because you never had what I had. That one stung. Not because it was true, but because he believed it. He really believed I hadn't earned anything on my own. My mom softened her voice, the way she always did when she wanted to sound reasonable while saying something unreasonable. Vanessa, honey, if you loved this family, you'd sign. This isn't about money. It's about unity. I could feel the pressure pressing down on me from every direction. The stares. The silence. The expectation that I would fold because I always had before. I was the one who gave in. The one who kept the peace. The one who said, fine, I'll handle it, while everyone else walked away. But not this time. I placed both hands flat on the table. I kept my voice steady, even though my heart was slamming against my ribs. The sale was legal. It was documented. Grandma had independent counsel. I'm not signing anything. My mom's eyes narrowed. If you don't sign, don't expect to be part of this family anymore. I held her gaze. Then maybe we should wait until Grandma's will is officially read before anyone makes decisions they can't take back. Silence. Complete, ringing silence. For a moment, my mom's confidence flickered. Her jaw tightened. Her fingers curled around the edge of the folder. But she recovered quickly. She always did. She closed the folder, stood up, and said, we'll see how that goes for you. The meeting ended. But the tension didn't leave the room. It followed me out the door, into my car, and all the way home. I sat in my driveway for 10 minutes, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe. I wasn't shaking because I was scared. I was shaking because I knew what was coming next. What came next was silence. Not the peaceful kind. The weaponized kind. Within a week, family members stopped inviting me to gatherings. Sunday dinners happened without me. Birthday group chats went quiet the moment I sent a message. I'd type something simple like, Happy birthday, Aunt Pat, and nobody would respond. Not even a thumbs up. My mom was spreading the story that I had taken advantage of Grandma. She told relatives I'd pressured a confused old woman into selling me a house for less than it was worth. She painted me as calculating and cold. A daughter who cared more about property than people. I'd hear fragments of it from the few cousins who still talked to me. Your mom said you basically tricked Grandma. She told Uncle Gerald you had the papers drawn up yourself. She said Grandma cried after signing. None of it was true. But truth doesn't matter much when someone tells a story with tears in their eyes and conviction in their voice. I'd be lying if I said the guilt didn't creep in. Late at night, when the house was quiet and every creak in the floorboards sounded like an accusation, I'd wonder, did I do the wrong thing? Should I just give it back to keep the peace? But then I'd remember sitting across from Grandma at her kitchen table, watching her sign those papers with a steady hand and a clear mind. She looked at me that day and said, don't let anyone take this from you, Vanessa. Not even family. So I didn't break. Then Derek escalated. He called me on a Tuesday morning, his voice clipped and businesslike, like he was reading from a script someone else had written. Vanessa, we've been going over the family records. You owe money for repairs that were done on that house before you bought it. Plumbing, roof work, electrical upgrades. That's family money you benefited from. Derek, those repairs were done 8 years before I bought the house. And they were paid for with rental income from the property itself. Doesn't matter. Mom says you owe us. Mom says, "Is that your legal argument?" He hung up. 2 days later, I received a letter. Not from a real attorney, but formatted to look like one. It threatened to contest the original sale on grounds of undue influence and diminished capacity. The language was clumsy and full of errors, but the intent was clear. They wanted to scare me into surrendering. I didn't panic. Instead, I went to my filing cabinet. I pulled out every document from the sale. The independent appraisal, the title transfer, the notarized affidavits, the correspondence between Grandma's attorney and mine. I organized everything chronologically and made copies. If they wanted a fight, I would be ready. Then came the public narrative attack. At a neighborhood association function 3 weeks later, I walked in and immediately felt the shift. People who used to smile at me looked away. Conversations stopped when I approached. My mom was already there, seated in the center of a group of women from the block, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. I stood near the refreshment table, pouring myself a cup of coffee, when I overheard her say, "Vanessa doesn't care about family. She just cares about money." She took my mother's house right out from under us. My own daughter. The women around her shook their heads sympathetically. One of them rubbed my mom's shoulder. I stood there holding that cup of coffee, and something clicked inside me. This wasn't about grief. This was never about grief. This was about control. My mom didn't want the house because she loved it. She wanted it because it represented power, ownership, authority. And she couldn't stand that I, the quiet daughter, the invisible one, had something she didn't control. I set the coffee down. I didn't confront her. I didn't make a scene. I walked out of that function and drove straight home. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and sent an email to Grandma's attorney. The subject line was simple. "I need to meet with you." My internal voice had shifted. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was strategic. They had their narrative. I was about to build mine with evidence. What they didn't know, what none of them ever considered, was that I document everything. It's not paranoia. It's professional habit. When you work in real estate appraisal, you learn fast that memory is unreliable, but paperwork is permanent. I had emails dating back 2 years before the sale. Emails where Grandma discussed her intentions clearly and without ambiguity. Messages where she wrote things like, "I want Vanessa to have the house because she's the only one who understands what it takes to maintain property." I had records showing that Grandma retained independent legal counsel, a lawyer she chose herself, without any input from me. His name was on every filing. His letterhead was on every communication. Nobody coached her. Nobody pushed her. I also had voicemails. 3 of them. From my own mother. Recorded months before the sale, each one pressuring Grandma for money. In the first one, she asked for $15,000 for Derek's failed business. In the second, she suggested Grandma add her name to the property deed. In the third, she said, "If you don't help us now, Mom, don't expect us to take care of you later." Those voicemails sat in a folder on my phone, backed up to 2 separate cloud accounts. And I had the appraisal records. 3 independent evaluations, all confirming the sale price was at fair market value. No discount. No manipulation. No favoritism. Just a clean, honest transaction between a grandmother and her granddaughter. I met privately with Grandma's attorney, Mr. Howard, at his office on a Thursday afternoon. His office smelled like old leather and wood polish, the kind of place where serious things were discussed quietly. He sat across from me, adjusted his glasses, and said, "Your grandmother expected this, Vanessa. She told me they'd come after the house. She knew. She knew her own family. That's why the will includes specific language protecting all prior transactions. Every sale she made before her death is shielded by clause." He leaned forward. "Your grandmother was sharper than any of them realized. And she loved you enough to make sure they couldn't undo what she'd done." I left his office that afternoon carrying a weight I hadn't expected. Not the weight of evidence. The weight of knowing Grandma had seen this coming and had protected me even from the grave. I didn't tell my family what I discovered. I didn't hint at it. I didn't call Derek back. I didn't respond to my mom's messages asking if I'd come to my senses. I let them believe I was stressed and uncertain. I let them think their pressure was working. Quietly, at my kitchen table every night, I prepared copies of every message, every voicemail, every legal document. I organized them into a binder with labeled tabs. I had a plan they never saw coming. There was one person I trusted completely through all of this, and it wasn't a family member. It was Mr. Howard himself. He wasn't just Grandma's attorney. He was an old family lawyer who had known the Coles for over 30 years. He'd watched my mom grow up. He'd watched Derek charm his way through family gatherings. And he'd watched me quietly do the work nobody else wanted to do. When I sat in his office that second time, he pulled out a document I hadn't seen before. "Your grandmother amended her will 6 months before she passed," he said, sliding a copy across his desk. She added a clause specifically addressing the house. I read it slowly. The language was precise and deliberate. Any heir who contests or attempts to reverse any finalized property sale made during Dorothy Cole's lifetime shall forfeit their entire share of the remaining estate. I looked up at him. She put this in writing? She put it in writing, had it witnessed by 2 independent parties, and recorded a video statement affirming her intentions. Your grandmother didn't leave anything to chance. He advised me to be patient, to stay composed, to let them make their moves while I kept my evidence close. Don't react emotionally, he said. Let the will do the talking. Meanwhile, my mom grew more confident with every passing day. She told relatives she was going to fix Vanessa's mistake at the will reading. She spoke about it like it was already decided, like the attorney was simply going to hand her the keys and apologize for the inconvenience. Derek started casually discussing renovations. At a family barbecue I wasn't invited to, my cousin told me later, he walked around talking about knocking out a wall in the kitchen and adding a deck to the backyard. He was planning his future in my house. The will reading appointment was set for a Friday morning, 10 days away. I spent those 10 days preparing emotionally and strategically. I reviewed every document. I rehearsed staying calm under pressure. I reminded myself that I wasn't fighting against my family. I was standing on ground my grandmother had built for me. They believed they had already won. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The attorney's office was on the 3rd floor of a quiet professional building downtown. The waiting room had beige walls and framed certificates. The sound of a ticking clock on the wall was steady and relentless, filling every pause, every breath, like a countdown nobody else noticed. My mom arrived first, wearing a navy blazer and pearl earrings, looking polished and composed. She carried herself like someone walking into a victory ceremony. Derek came in behind her, hands in his pockets, already smiling. Aunt Patricia and Uncle Gerald followed, sitting in the corner chairs without saying much. I was the last to enter. Nobody looked at me. Nobody spoke to me. My mom glanced in my direction and then turned her attention to the door of the conference room, waiting for Mr. Howard. When he opened the door and invited us in, the room was simple. A long table, 8 chairs, a projector screen mounted on the far wall. Mr. Howard sat at the head of the table with a manila folder in front of him. He didn't rush. He put on his reading glasses, opened the folder, and said, "We're here for the formal reading of the last will and testament of Dorothy and Cole. I'll ask that everyone remain seated and allow me to read the document in full before any questions." My mom nodded, folding her hands on the table like she was ready to receive good news. Mr. Howard began reading. The first few sections were standard. Personal belongings distributed among grandchildren. A small savings account split between Patricia and Gerald. A donation to the local library Grandma had supported for years. Then he reached the property clause. He read it slowly, clearly, and without emotion. Clause 7. Regarding the residential property located at 412 Birchwood Lane, previously sold to my granddaughter, Vanessa Cole. This sale was intentional, voluntary, and executed with full legal capacity. It is my express wish that this transaction not be challenged, reversed, or contested by any member of my family. The room didn't move. Mr. Howard continued. Clause 8. Any heir who initiates legal action to contest or reverse any finalized property sale conducted during my lifetime shall immediately and irrevocably forfeit their entire share of the remaining estate. My mom's composure cracked. Her lips parted. She leaned forward and said, "Wait, that can't be right." Mr. Howard held up a hand. "Mrs. Cole, I ask that you allow me to finish." He turned to the projector. A video appeared on the screen. Grandma sat in a chair in what looked like Mr. Howard's office, wearing a green cardigan and her reading glasses. Her voice was clear and steady. "I'm recording this because I know what's going to happen after I'm gone. I sold the house to Vanessa because she earned it. She was the one who showed up. She was the one who cared for the property and for me. This was my decision, made freely, and I don't want anyone undoing it because of jealousy or entitlement." The video ended. The room was silent. I opened my bag and placed the binder on the table. Printed emails. Saved voicemails transcribed and dated. Appraisal records. Independent counsel confirmations. Everything organized, labeled, and undeniable. Derek stared at the binder. His smile was gone. He leaned toward my mom and whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "If we fight this, we lose everything." My mom turned to me. Her eyes were hard. Her voice was tight. "You planned this." I looked at her calmly. "No. Grandma protected me." After the reading, there were no more threats. No more letters. No more whispered accusations at neighborhood events. My mom and Derek withdrew any challenge to the sale. They didn't have a choice. The will was airtight, and they knew it. Fighting would have cost them every dollar Grandma left behind. Over the following weeks, some relatives quietly reached out. Aunt Patricia sent me a short message that said, "I should have spoken up at that dinner. I'm sorry I didn't." A cousin I hadn't heard from in months called just to say, "I always knew you were the one holding things together." The false narrative my mom had built started to crumble on its own. People who had heard her version of events began hearing the truth, not from me, but from others who had been in that room when the will was read. I chose limited contact going forward. I didn't cut my family off completely, but I set boundaries I had never set before. I stopped answering calls that came with guilt attached. I stopped attending events where I was expected to perform gratitude for being tolerated. I expanded my appraisal business. I took on new clients. I invested in continuing education and earned a certification I'd been putting off for years. I poured energy into myself instead of pouring it into people who only noticed me when they needed something. One evening, I sat alone in my living room. The house was quiet. The windows were open, and a warm breeze moved through the curtains. I looked around at the walls, the floors, the door frames Grandma had walked through 1,000 times. I realized I wasn't just the responsible daughter anymore. I was independent. Truly independent. Not because someone gave me permission, but because I had prepared, held my ground, and refused to let guilt rewrite the truth. They thought guilt would break me, but preparation saved me. If your family ever tried to pressure you financially or make you feel guilty for protecting what's legally yours, you know how heavy that feels. It sits on your chest. It makes you question yourself even when you know you're right. Have you ever been labeled selfish just for setting boundaries? Have you ever been told you were tearing the family apart simply because you refused to hand over what you'd earned? Drop your story in the comments. I want to hear it. Did you stand your ground, or are you still navigating that fight? Subscribe if you believe protecting yourself doesn't make you greedy. It makes you strong. This community is for people who were told to stay quiet, but chose clarity instead. You're not alone in this, and your story matters more than you think. Click share to help this story reach someone else who needs to hear it today. Sometimes one story can give someone the courage to stop folding and start standing. Thank you for watching. If my story touched you, a like would mean the world to me. To help others find this story, click share. I always read the comments, so feel free to share a piece of your story with us. I'd love to hear what you've been through and how you handled it. And remember, standing firm doesn't make you heartless. Sometimes it's the most loving thing you can do for yourself. Take care of yourself out there. I'll see you in the next one.